everybody. Hello and welcome to Book Dawn, the show by the fans for the fans. I'm Rakisher fan. We love books, and this is the show where Farooq and I we come to you guys with two of our favorite books, and we talk about those books because we love sharing the things we love with you guys. And today is a very special show. As you can see, we have Joe Berne, Mr. JCM Berne, the author of the Hybrid Helix series, which nobody knows, but everybody knows, Wistful Ascending. So Wistful Ascending, the author, I read his books. I think I got into it a year back, which is when I covered it in Book Dawn. And I'm all caught up with all 6 books. I love them. Farooq has just gotten into it. He's read 2 books. So we're going to dive into the world of Joe Berne, his books, his life, what he likes, what he doesn't like. I'm going to talk about my pet peeves. Farooq is going to just talk. We're going to have a great time. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Joe Berne.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored. For a variety of reasons, I'm honored by anyone interviews me, but you guys are a little extra special for reasons I think we'll mention later. That I have an emotional connection to Bangladesh that is not mine, but acquired. So I think this is like the coolest thing. I told you I shared your review on my family because I'll just. My wife's family is all from Bangladesh, right? So my wife was born here, but she actually spent 4 years back in the village because her mother had to go back to finish residency, I think. Mm-hmm. But her whole family is from Bangladesh. So I'm around, Bengali people all the time. So I shared on the family, the group chat, the link to your video, and I'm like, I don't understand what they're saying, but they're talking about. And it got me a lot of points with my my aunts and uncles. So it was a very cool experience for me.
So Joe, you're the first foreign author, international author on this show. We've had local authors. Because I just told you we don't do interviews. We just basically when we really like somebody's books, we bring him in. They come in, they talk about, and we just hang out. That's what we do. Perfect. And we don't do it very often, but you're the first foreign guest we have. We're so honored to have you here.
I'm honored to be here. It's fantastic.
Very, very happy. So we're going to start off. So the format is this. Farooq is going to start off with one book he wants to talk about. Farooq, please don't take too much time. What book do you want to talk about, Farooq?
All right. So, Joe, I think this is going to involve you because at one point there was some stuff you were saying about grimdark, and Shakib's been going on and on for the last couple of shows, different shows, where he's been talking about, grimdark. I don't really get it. It's not really my cup of tea. I'm not so much into it. So this time I figured out today I'm going to actually review one of the biggest examples of grimdark literature that's out there. It's called The Prince of Thorns. I'm not sure if either of you guys have read it, and it's by Mark.
I started it, then I put it aside.
All right. So, I will. All right. So basically, this is the context of the setup. So it's about this one kid. Usually you get into fantasy novels and there's this hero or this budding hero who grows up and becomes something. But this story starts off with a 9-year-old kid who at the point where the story kicks off is just about 14 years old. So this 14-year-old kid who's gone through something really traumatic in his life. His mother's been raped and murdered. His brother's been murdered. So that's been there in his life. And from that point onwards, how this prince, who grows up to become someone who lives and exists for revenge. I can absolutely understand Shakib saying that he started the book and then he put it down because it starts off with, you don't think that you're going to read about the main protagonist of a book. And in the first few pages, he's raped. He's a little kid. He's a 14-year-old kid and he's in the middle of rapes. He's looting. He's killing. He's pillaging. He's burning. And he's doing it just because he wants loot. That's it. There is no bigger goal in mind. So immediately you kind of are like, wait, why am I reading about a character who's done so much of burning, raping, looting? And it's all from the first person point of view. So it really takes some getting used to. You're trying to understand, why am I so involved? Why is the author trying to push me into a life story of this kid who's got so much of hatred in him? But that's where he makes it work. Mark Lawrence takes this character whose name is Jorg, I think is how you'd pronounce it, Jorg or Jorg or George, whichever way. This 14-year-old kid who's a prince and who's run away from his father because he's so built up on revenge and his father's not taking revenge on the murderer of his mother and brother, that he's run away and he's joined a group of highway bandits. They go around killing, raping, murdering. And that's where the story kicks off. And he does such a beautiful way of, pulling you in It's so simply written. And one of the things I know you guys are going to love is this kid's full of humor. He's talking about the most evil things, but there's always this little bit of comedy. There's always this bit of fun thing, this little bit of dry humor that just kind of makes it easier to swallow. And then before you know it, it's a very short book. I don't think I could have done so much of violence on a 600 pager. It's, I think, about 300 pages. Very fast paced. Things happen. Boom, boom, boom. It's part of, I think, the Broken Empire trilogy. This is the first book. There's another book, which is, I think, is the King of Thorns. And then there's the Emperor of Thorns, which is relevant because this kid at one point says, I'm just 14 years old, but I'm going to be the king by the time I'm 15. And I'll be the emperor by the time I'm 20. And I'm sure the rest of the books take you along that journey. But it's none of, the kid learning or coming into his own or becoming a better person as the story progresses. He remains this core person of, hell-bent on revenge. And he takes evil as a very natural thing. He's absolutely fine with killing people that are very close to him. And the story progresses in a really fast-paced manner. I love that. If you're looking into a story which builds in, which, Joe, you're really good at, world building, but that's not something Mark Lawrence has tried to do in this one. There's not so much of world building, although there is a little thing that comes up, which is a massive twist in the story. A very interesting way the story flows. And that's why I'm telling you guys to read it, because even though this is one of the best examples of grimdark, where all the characters they've got not just shades of gray, they're like tons of gray in their character. And they're very human. They're all evil. They're all, they don't really think about, do I do this for the greater good? I'm existing just for things that are attractive to me. So it's all of that, but it's so well written. It's so fast paced that you get into it, boom, 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 things happen. And at the end of it, it's not something which makes you want to think like, okay, this is just too much violence. It gets you to that point where you're like, okay, I understand why there's so much violence. I know why there's so much negativity in this character. And that to me was magical. I have never in all my years read a book where the character that I'm trying to follow through, that I'm falling in love with, is so negative, is so evil. And at the same time, I can't wait to turn over the page and read the next chapter or the next page. It's amazing. Shakib, I know that you're not into grimdark. Joe, I don't know how much of into grimdark you are. But this is one thing that, if you guys love fantasy, if you guys love easy reading, then this is something that you just might want to give a try. I've read the first book, and I cannot wait to get started on book number 2 and book number 3.
Yeah, I read a bit of the first book, and he's a very good writer. But he's got the gift of writing. Very, very clever word plays and whatnot. Very sharp dialogues. But it was a little too dark for me, and I was like, okay, fine, I'll read it later. And I'm one of those idiots that I get taken in by covers and names. I was like, wow, I love this name. So I bought the entire trilogy before I had any clue what it was all about. It's sitting in my Kindle. So one of these days, I'm going to get back to it.
I'll be honest.
Anyway, so guys,
I got taken in by the cover as well.
Yeah, I love a good cover. So guys, if you have any questions for Joe or for Farooq or me, just put it in the chat. We're going to have a little bit of adda, and we're going to go through your comments and answer them as well. So moving on to me, we're going to end with Joe. Moving on to me, I want to talk about something I got. It really, 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 it was like I got hit by the hammer of Thor. You know how suddenly you have an experience and you think, I didn't know the world could be like this. This book hit me like that. This is another indie author called Pirate Abba, and the book is called The Wandering Inn. It's in a fantasy genre called cozy fantasy. The best way to describe it, cozy fantasy, is what if the hobbits never left the Shire? Then what kind of story would you have? That's basically the premise of a cozy fantasy, where you have fantastical creatures. They sit around a very nice village or something, and they have little problems, day, slice of life, etc. So this is a story like that. It's loosely based on the, let me just bring up the picture, loosely based on the lit RPG genre, where like role-playing games, your characters level up. But thank God this author does not make a big deal out of it. There's no pages of stats of leveling up. Just here and there, you get nice little level up very, very smoothly, I would say. It's not in your face. And Farooq, I've already told you a bit about it. I don't know, Joe, if you've read this book. Let me bring up the picture. It is, I thought it was masterclass in writing. This is an instant classic for me. It's literally this one book. The emotional journey I had was like starting from The Hobbit and ending with Return of the King, or starting from Archie Comics and ending with Avengers Endgame. That's the kind of emotional journey this book took me into. And just like you, Joe, this author has a very fluid, very sweet writing style. You just flow along, and very innocent starting. You meet these characters. The characters are so lovable. I love nice characters. I don't mean nice as in they're Santa Claus. What I mean is they're interesting characters, and they're not just evil and dark and want to kill people for no reason whatsoever. The kind we get in Grimdark. So they're not like that. These are normal people with normal different motivations. Some people have particular angles or agendas. Other people don't. And you get hooked up in this web of this woman called I forgot his name. Oh, Erin. This woman called Erin, who just like isekai, it's an isekai trope. She suddenly appears in this fantasy world from our Earth, and she finds this inn, and she becomes the innkeeper. And this inn, she names this inn the Wandering Inn. So it's basically she's one of the main characters. There's another human character from our world. You follow these two POVs, but mostly it's her. And oh my God, Farooq and Joe, this book just upended me. It's a massive book. I think 1,700 pages long, maybe. I'm not 100% sure. The booktuber Daniel Green, he made a video on this one book, which starts off with him piling on the entire Lord of the Rings with The Hobbit, the entire Banazan Book of the Fallen, which is 10 books plus, I think, the entire Wheel of Time, which is 14 books, entire Game of Thrones. So he put all those books on the table, and he said the Wandering Inn series is bigger than all of these combined. And I love it because I never felt the weight of the pages. I just kept smoothly going along. This is very warm, very human, very relatable, even though it has fantastic creatures. Starts off very cozy, then things escalate. Starts off very simple, then this wonderful author keeps adding layers and layers and layers. And I'll just say, it's not a spoiler, but Joe, Farooq, I think Farooq, I told you, there's this sequence, there's this chain of events which happen where two characters, I'm not going to name them, they sit down across one another and they play games of chess throughout the night. And that sequence ripped my heart out. It's just two people playing chess. And it just ripped my heart out. This happens sometime in the middle of the book. And that's just one example of how emotionally hard-hitting this very, very cozy fantasy starts out as. I cannot praise this book enough. This is like when I first read Lord of the Rings, when I first read Stephen King, when I first read Alistair MacLean or Agatha Christie, when I first finished the 4 books of JCM Berne's Hybrid Helix. I was like, oh my God, what's going on here? So these are what I first felt when I went back to Dresden Files. I remember the first time I read the first book, I was not impressed. Then other people kept telling me, please go back, please go back. Then I went back, and now it's my favorite series of all time. So this is one of those books for me. Huge impact. Thank you, Pirate Abba, for such a wonderful, wonderful book. And I cannot imagine a traditional publishers publishing something like this. It's just, I cannot imagine it. So thank God for indie authors. And on that topic, Farooq, are you interested? Joe, have you heard of this book? I don't know. Heard about it?
I've seen many reviews. I'm not really a lit RPG person. Like when I see stats or like leveling up, it kind of throws me out of the story. I'm not as much of a gamer, I think. I don't know. I'm sure I'll try again, but and that's also like reading The Wandering Inn's a commitment. That's a lot of words. This was on the this was published on the Royal Road, right? The serialized model, right?
Yes.
Pirate Abba. I want to say it's a woman, but I'm not positive. But because they keep their identity hidden. Yeah. I don't know why I had that idea. Anyway, whoever they are, they would do like 5 or 7 chapters a week, and they had writing sessions where they would like stream it, and their productivity is amazing. That many putting out that many, but you have to keep. That's the model on the Royal Road of the publishing, and it's really hard. I can't do that. But
no, I'm a big fan of Dungeon Crawler Carl, the series.
Oh yeah.
And for me, that's a very in-your-face lit RPG, like literally pages of stats when they level up. Here, it's very subtle. Like one here, one there. There's no pages of stats, which really helped me because I'm not a big fan of all those stats and whatnot. But it's a serialized novel. It's for free. It's for free on the website. You can read the entire 15 volumes for free. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to buy the books.
Yeah, when you buy them, I think at least some of them were edited, which is not true of the version that's free. So you get a cleaned up I don't know how I don't know how big a difference it really makes because I have not heard anyone say, and I haven't read both. But just FYI, they did try to go back and get editing for the official releases, but not possible for the original live chapters because they're coming out too fast, I guess.
Yeah, and that's a different journey. That's a whole different journey.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm very happy that Joe, you were here when I'm sharing one. I think this is going to be one of my favorite series.
Someone asked if I'm British. I'm actually American, United States. I don't know how much we want to get into politics. Probably not. Let's just don't hold anything my country does against me, please.
No politics. If you want politics, okay. go on Facebook and comment on your Facebook here. No politics.
Yeah.
Every government is an asshole. Let's not go there. People are nice.
That's the one thing we're not interested in talking about.
Yeah.
No, I get it. I just whenever I talk to people not from the U.S. and I'm from the U.S. and it's always like, but I'm sorry. You always have to add that. I won't go into any further detail.
It's not on you. It's not on you.
We're from Bangladesh.
No, let me tell you something, Joe. If we Bangladeshis had the kind of resources and power and whatever that you guys had, it would be worse. It would be way worse. For example, India. So let's not go there. Not calling kettle black. Stupid. Anyway.
All right, let's move on.
Joe, so it's time for you to share the series or books that you want to talk about.
Yeah, I can't pick a book because my brain doesn't work that way. So I picked the Dresden Files, which is one of my favorites and was a huge inspiration for my books, the Hybrid Helix. And I think what Shakib just said is very relevant. Most people are not super impressed by Stormfront. I quite liked it. I read it when it first came out, and I enjoyed it a lot. It was sort of one of the early urban fantasies to me. There had been others before, but it was one of my big intros to the genre. Jim Butcher has said if you want to start and you're not sure, start at book 7. I don't know if I necessarily agree. Or you can start at book 7 and read forward and then go back and read the first 6 if you love them, which I think is worthwhile. So there's a few things that Dresden probably does poorly. A lot of people take issue with the way, because it's all first person POV, and he describes, especially in the first 16 books, it gets a little better later, but not that much better. He describes women in a way some people find somewhat one note, like every woman is sort of described in terms of how much he'd like to have sex with them. And it's the character. It's actually not Jim Butcher, because if you read his other books, he doesn't do this. Even if you read other short stories in the Dresden universe, he doesn't do this. It's meant to be a weakness of Harry's that he's sort of this very horny young guy, I assume. And then that's what it's supposed to show, but it can get a little over the top. There's one character in particular where she's a little on the young side, and it can be, nothing happens, but the descriptions are a little creepy, just a little, very slightly creepy. Okay. If you get past that, and I think it's worth getting past, unless that's really triggering for you, they're really excellent. A lot of things. One is each book's a standalone, except for the last 2. The first 16 were standalone. The last 2, he wrote one big book and had to split it and release it as 2 because it's too big to publish. And you can tell when you read it. Battlegrounds and the other one. But each book is really satisfying conclusion. The book ends, but there's this ongoing storyline. That's a format I really like, and I think a lot of people enjoy that. It became very popular in urban fantasy, where you things progress, and things really do progress. You do understand things later in the series that you don't early on, and the character grows very subtly and gradually in very interesting ways. Early on, he really does seem kind of young and inexperienced, and later on, he really does feel different. And again, same sense, and the sense of humor is phenomenal. There's something. I made up the word. I call prose sparkly. Some people write prose where none of the sentences grab you. You're just like, okay, and like I think Brandon Sanderson is sort of famous for this, and he does it on purpose, right? One sentence in Brandon Sanderson, you're gonna be like, oh, that's clever use of language. He deliberately avoids that because he's trying to draw you into the story and have you not notice any particular sentence. With Butcher, I feel like every paragraph has spark. It has something interesting. It describes something in an odd way. There's a weird metaphor. There's usually funny. Harry's voice is a very funny, sort of self-reflective voice. And if you don't like the humor, don't read the books. But if you do, and I love it. I mean, they're really worthwhile. And the other thing I love is it's got one of my favorite tropes, which is this guy. You're seeing him from his own point of view, and he's a very nice guy, and he doesn't want to hurt anybody, basically, right? And then every once in a while, you get a peek into other people's perspective. Like they tell him, and he's a really scary dude. And I love that. I love the like calm, you know, like it's like these old Bruce Lee movies. He's like a calm, humble person, and then all of a sudden you realize, this dude's the scariest dude in the restaurant, or whatever, right? And I steal that, I love using it myself. Or all of a sudden other people, or Rohan admits to other people, like, I'm actually the scariest guy here, and they're like, oh, we forgot, but it's because he pulls it out once in a while. It's really rare. There's this one scene, I don't remember which book it's in. Someone's like, I'm gonna threaten Harry's friends or something, right? And he's like, don't push me too far, because if you push me too far, I'm gonna do like all these different, like, these people offered me a deal for power that I turned down, these bad guys, but I'll take it. And that thing that I could do that would stain my soul forever, I could do that. And then I'd be the nastiest dude you've ever seen, and I'll come for you. And you realize it's all been set up for this one paragraph or sentence for many, many books. And it's so satisfying, because I think it's satisfying because it's that illusion of power, right? We'd all like to be, I'm a meek, I'm a normal, I don't, I'm not mobbed up. I don't have a bunch of guns, but like, I'd love the idea that if someone threatened me, I could pull that out, like that's a power fantasy. Oh, I'm actually very dangerous. You just don't know it because I'm a kind self. I'm not, right? But that's the fantasy. And Dresden pulls it off really well. I almost mentioned Butcher.
Yeah. Why don't you please share this story?
So first of all, like there were, so I went to Dragon Con, which is a very large convention in the U.S. It's fantasy in general. It includes science fiction, fantasy authors, also like Star Wars stuff, comic book stuff, Doctor Who stuff, all of that. It's like 70,000 people. So it's a big con, but so I'm there, and there's an area where the writers hang out. There's one particular spot, right? So I'm there, and I'm talking to everybody because I'm very gregarious. But Jim Butcher's there, and I'm like, I have nothing to say to you. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, I was like starstruck a little bit, right? So he was standing like 15 feet from me. He was talking to his son and like two other people, but they were like, no one was bothering them because it's the writers' bar, right? All the writers know. No one swarms Jim Butcher. If he comes up to you, it's fine. But if he's just standing there talking to his son, you leave him alone, because he's been at signings all day with lines of fans, right? Yeah. So I'm like, I can't. And I could have talked to him, right? He's very nice, but like I couldn't. I had nothing to say. So I go to the men's room, and as I'm coming out of the men's room, you know that moment where you open the door of the men's room and you're leaving, and someone's entering at exactly the same time, and you're actually in the doorway together. And for just a moment, I froze in the door, and I'm like, I could just turn around and follow him back in and strike up a conversation. And I thought that for a second. I froze with like one foot in the air, and then I must have not been drinking very much, because I was like, that's creepy, Joe. Don't do that. And I kept walking, and I did not follow him into the bathroom and try to say anything. And it was my saving grace. But I went back to my friend group, in the bar area. We weren't really, just a place to hang out. And I was like, guys, you wouldn't believe it. I almost went to the bathroom with Jim Butcher. And like, why are you telling us this? This isn't a story. The fact that you thought about following him back in, that's a problem, Joe. Like that's not a good thing. But I didn't do it. And they're like, well, okay, that's a saving grace there, I guess. I don't know. So I almost met Jim Butcher. And I'm still now I know what to say next time I meet him. Because now if I see him in the same situation, I'll be like, Jim, I almost followed you into the bathroom one time and I didn't. And that'll be my like intro, my like hook. So then I can talk to Jim Butcher next time I'm in a situation like that. But it was pretty funny. I don't know. So I was very excited. I was like, I almost met Jim Butcher, but then I didn't. And but the cons are fantastic, because you do meet a lot of writers, and there's a lot of them that's a whole different topic. But that made my career for me was that con, was meeting in person a lot of other writers and socializing with them. All of a sudden I was like, okay, this is worth it. That was my tipping point, because I don't make money.
When was this?
Right?
When was this?
This was Dragon Con 2023. So it's always in end of August. In 2023. It was my first con, and I met people like knew who I was. Not everyone, but some people did. They recognized me. Like, I have enough sales and enough like notoriety on YouTube or whatever that some people know. And I was like, okay, I'm a member of this group in this community in a way that's meaningful. And all of a sudden I felt like, okay, this is worth it. Like if I ever had doubts about should I quit, because it's a lot of energy and time and work, and money, to do this. And I was like, no, it's worth it. That was my tipping point where I haven't doubted it since. So, anyway.
All right, great. I think that's a great segue into the main topic. Farooq, do you want to say anything else right now?
No. I was gonna just grab up there and ask him those questions because we're dying to find out.
That's what I was saying. So this is a good segue into the world of Joe Byrne. Let me just bring up the relevant photo. So, entering the world of Joe Byrne. These are books that I love so much. This is Wistful Ascending, Return of the Griffin, Blood Reunion, Shadow of Hyperion, Eyes of Empire, and the most recent one, Suppression of Powers. All 6 books widely available, Amazon and everywhere else. So, Joe, when you first published Wistful Ascending, it was, I think, 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And you were what, 49 years old? You were around 49 years old.
That sounds right. Doing some math.
Why was 49 the perfect time to publish Wistful Ascending and not 48 or 35 or 25? Like, where did this?
Okay.
What was keeping you back? What were you busy with?
I love books and reading and comics and that sort of stuff from a young age. I was spending all my money on comic books from the age of 10 onward. I was in the bookstore all the time. I read everything that came in that looked interesting. So I was into reading, and I don't think I ever felt that like writing to me was like career-wise was kind of like becoming like a Hollywood actor. Like it sounds great, but most of us don't seriously pursue that, even if we think it'd be cool, right? Because we know it's like the chances are small, or a Bollywood actor, right, or whatever. So then in my late 20s, I was like doing some D&D stuff, and I had a very dead end job. I was loading trucks for UPS, which is a American package delivery service, right? And I had some free time, so I wrote a book, a couple books, and one I thought was publishable, and I sent it to Tor, and they very kindly rejected it. It was terrible. They should have rejected it. But at that point, self-publishing, this is 98 or 99, self-publishing existed, right? You could spend thousands of dollars, get a print run of your books, go to like shows and sell them from the trunk of your car. But you required a big monetary upfront investment, and like you had to find artists, and like there wasn't information. The internet didn't exist the way it does now. Like even finding information on how to do this would have been hard. So it wasn't really feasible. So I couldn't get a real publisher, right? I wasn't going to do it. 2006, I had some time, right? My daughter was a little older. We didn't have my son yet. So I wrote another book, and it sort of never went anywhere. I never had the wherewithal to like send it. And then in 2012, self-publishing really began. Modern self-publishing began in 2012, right? That's when the Kindle came out. All of a sudden, you could, for very low cost, write a book, submit it to Amazon. You could make your own cover, right? And you could potentially have life-changing monetary returns, right? With no effort on your part and no financial investment. That did not exist before the Kindle, right? So it changed the landscape. But at that time, I was working at my current job. I started working as a software developer in 2011. I had a career change midlife. I was just swamped trying to keep up with my day job, which is a great day job, but like it was a lot of work. I had younger children. My son was born in 2008. He's adopted, but we got him in 2008, just later in the year. So like, he was young, and like, I was going through a divorce. A lot of things were going on, and I just didn't really have the energy. And then around 2019, two things happened. One, I had some more time freed up. Once your kids are a certain age, and my ex-wife had primary custody. My wife's children are a little older, so I wasn't changing diapers, or I was far from that. So the number of hours per day I needed to spend on like children was really, very small. My wife's the cook, so and then I really was inspired, and I was inspired by the same thing that always inspires me, which is spite, or right. There's something the thing that inspires me to create is to consume something that I love that has something I don't like in it. I don't want to say a flaw. I'll say, or you could say it's a flaw. To me, it's a flaw, right? There's something missing, something done wrong in something I love. It's not something that's bad. Something that's bad doesn't inspire me. It's something and in this case, it was a very specific thing in Invincible, very specific like thing in the plot that I thought didn't quite make sense. So I don't know if you know Invincible. It's a comic and it's
Yeah.
it's a cartoon. Okay. I'm a
Joe,
huge. This is
just a quick aside. I saw your most recent interview by this young person. I forgot his name, unfortunately. Very recently
Usman.
interview. Maybe probably. He's
Bards
in
and Books?
Canada.
Usman.
He's
Bards
from
and Books.
Canada,
Yeah.
So what I found really funny was that you were throwing out these, just like you did right now, these references, and he wasn't catching a single one of them because he's not a child of the 70s. All three of us are children of the 70s. So we know whatever references you throw out,
Okay.
pop culture,
Okay.
we'll get it.
Okay,
We
okay,
know
okay.
Invincible. So carry on.
There's one thing I didn't like in Invincible. It's the fact that when his brother's born, and all of a sudden like, oh, you can raise one of these superpowered beings. You can like impregnate one of these insect-like purple aliens, and then they're fully grown in like a year or less. And you can take. How could you not take over the universe with that? How could no one have thought of that in centuries of Viltrumite existence? And that bugged me. So I was like, I'm going to take that one thing and twist it. What if instead it was this? So for me, it's the children, it's the hybrids that are the only ones with powers, but they're sterile. They can't breed, and that changes the power dynamic, and everything spiraled from there. And of course, I pulled in lots of other things. Like if you read my books, I steal a lot from a lot of places. And people are like, oh, like sometimes I'll even see someone. What I see, I think I'd written the books, and it'd been like 2 years, and someone did a review of like Rurouni Kenshin, and I'm like, oh, I stole a lot from that show. I forgot just how much, right? Because Rurouni Kenshin, like the main character, is like a swordsman and it's already after the fact where he was like the terror of this war, and had slain, the slave, and then he's just trying to be a nice guy, not kill anybody. And I'm like, that's really close to what I write, like not the same, but really close. So anyway, that was so it was about the feasibility of self-publishing, because I still don't think I would have the work. Because if I wanted a traditional publisher, I would have to send, query agents, take maybe a year or two of sending possibly hundreds of letters to different people, researching who's a good fit, tailoring each query letter, right? There's so many hundreds of hours of work, and then, hoping, and then years later, and I'm 50 at the time. I was 49, but I was almost 50. And I don't think I have the stamina to write and create and do all that and have my day job, but I could self-publish. So what I did is I said, all right, I promised myself, if I finish this book, I'm going to publish it on Amazon, even if it sucks. That was my mantra. I put that on a little sticky, put it on my monitor, even if it sucks. That was my how the whole book was written. And I put it out, and enough people liked it enough, including people who weren't necessarily my target audience, that I was like, there might be something worth doing here. So then I spent a year learning how to write. I hired an editor. I watched a bunch of like Brandon Sanderson's YouTube lectures on how to write, which I can't recommend highly enough. This stuff is fantastic. I spent a lot of time learning craft. I completely rewrote Wistful Ascending, and then I went on from there. But that was why. It was about having enough time and having that inspiration. And really, before 2019, 2018, I didn't have the excess time. I was working really hard to learn. Now I kind of know what I'm doing at my job. It's not as consuming. It's still a lot of work, but it's not up all night thinking, how do I fix this thing in the code that I don't really know how to fix? It happens sometimes.
I love this story particularly because there's no what I'm trying to say is, it's never too late. It's a cliche, but it's never too late. It's never too late. You started your series when you're 49 years old. In Bangladeshi, in our culture, people, when they reach their 49, when they're 50s, especially our father's generations, their life is basically they're half in retirement mode. They wake up in the morning, sit with the newspaper in front of the TV. So that's the kind of attitude they had, not us, obviously. So I love the fact that you're 49 years old. You're like, shit, I can do better than what Robert Kirkman did in Invincible, and I'm going to do it. And I'm thank God for technology. Thank God for Amazon. Thank God for technology, which is why we're able to have you on the show right now. So it's incredible.
Sorry.
No, I just want to know one thing, because I'm dying to ask this question. I've just finished Wistful Ascending, and you said you basically rewrote the book. So how much of what I'm reading right now was not there in your first draft or your first.
Okay. The story is almost identical.
Okay.
The difference is I rewrote almost every paragraph, and I don't know how much into like the craft side of writing you are, but there's things like passive voice. Okay, so like passive voice would be if you describe like the street, you say leaves covered, the ground was covered by leaves. Right. The ground was covered by leaves, and then that's passive. So the ground is the subject of the sentence, and it was covered, right? Or you could say leaves covered the ground, which is the leaves of the subject. What are they doing? They're covering the ground. No one's being covered by anything. Leaves are covering some other guy, right?
Okay.
And it sounds like nothing, but if you read whole paragraphs and descriptions that are rewritten from passive voice to active voice, which is a very simple, if you read it, it will feel much more dynamic. And it's a very subtle difference, and it looks the same unless you're looking for. I'd never thought about this, right? I mean, this isn't something I invented, right? This is something I got from lectures on craft, on how to write by real authors, right? I didn't make this up. So things like that, things like taking out adverbs. So instead of he walked slowly, you would say he crept, right? Or instead of saying he spoke softly, he whispered. It makes it more dynamic to read. It makes it more intriguing in a very subtle way. And most readers will not, I certainly didn't, but most readers still will not consciously know that they're having a better experience, except they enjoy it more. And I really had fun with that. That really flowed. And you're like, you don't know why, but I know why. Like writers know why. It's like a trick. It's not a trick. It's just good writing. So in that sense, every paragraph is different than it was in the original version.
Okay.
Story-wise, there's only one big change, which is there was one part where the Ursins, I had a whole like 2-paragraph thing where the Ursins were going to marry Rohan off. They had in their culture, and this is canonical now, the women choose the mates, and the women choose their mates, and if multiple females want the same male, they have a wrestling competition to decide who will win. So these Ursins are like, oh, Rohan, good news. One of our females has chosen you to be a mate. And he's like, I know, I don't think that's a good idea. Like, oh, we get it. You're nervous. You're scared. She'll be gentle. I know she's bigger than you, but it'll be okay. Really, don't worry. And he's like, no, I really don't want to get married, guys. And they're like, yeah, you're so adorable, but look, we'll talk you through it. It'll be fine. We'll get you a beer, and there was this whole thing, and it was going on for like a whole chapter. And it was just too much. And my editor was like, this is too much of the Ursins. And I'm like, I hate to say it, but she was right. It was like one too many, and it wasn't really relevant to anything else. It didn't build up anything else. It was, I still think it was a very funny like chunk, but it didn't need to stay there. But really the plot is the same. The same thing happened with the Turn to Griffin. Turn to Griffin, I completely rewrote it, but I changed like 2 chapters are completely different, but most of the story is almost exactly the same, except I trimmed out a lot. So a lot of times there's some repetitive stuff where he's explaining something to one person, and he's explaining the same thing to another person like 3 chapters later, and it's like, you don't need that. And I was less experienced as a writer. So now with the benefit of a little, 5 more years and like 7 more books under my belt, I went back and I'm like, this wasn't laid out correctly, right? And then like the scene where he meets his mom, I delay the reader finding out who she is. Like I put that off by another page, right? And it makes it seem a little bit better. Not a lot. And if you've read it already, it's not going to make any difference. But changes like that, I put all throughout Return of the Griffin. I don't think I'd ever do the same to like Blood Reunion. I think by that time, I felt like I knew what I was doing.
Okay.
So
not that it's a perfect book.
Before we jump into the other things, just Joe, how would you describe your series to people who have not read it?
I have a hard time with this. I have a hard time with marketing. This series is it's a space opera. It's a superhero for grown-ups. And I say that because it's really not YA. The themes are themes I think adults generally appreciate more. It's an action story with some deeper messages if you care to look for them. I have a constant battle. People, it's popcorn reading. It's stuff you don't have to think about. And I'm like, well, you don't have to think about it, but maybe you could. I don't know. It's like Guardians of the Galaxy in a book. That's my favorite comp, I think, or one of my favorite comps, or the third Thor movie, not the second Thor movie or the fourth Thor movie, but the third one.
Ragnarok. Thor Ragnarok.
Right? Yeah. So there's there's a lot of I have a terrible time trying to figure it out. I don't feel like I'm in a good niche because it's not grimdark, it's not cozy, it's not any of those things exactly. Well. But I do that very deliberately because I don't hate grimdark, but it's not my favorite. I don't like that. to me, most of Grimdark has this sort of sense that people are generally bad, right? Because that's the thing. Like, right, to me, the genres
right now. Yeah,
the genres work like this. The genres work like this. To modern, this isn't true, right? Like, Tolkien was not the first fantasy writer, but people think of Tolkien as like the start. Epic fantasy is like people forget about Conan, people forget about all this other stuff, but people think about Tolkien from a genre perspective as like the king, because for the 80s everyone was writing Tolkien derivative stuff. So in our minds, that's like how everything started, right? Even though it didn't really. And what is Tolkien? You've got good and bad magic, and you've got truly great heroes, right? They might have flaws, but they're truly good people trying to save everybody, like Aragorn, right? The Aragorns. They might have flaws, but they're genuinely, we're going to save the people. That's their. And then Grimdark is like, to me, dark fantasy is where you take out the good magic, right? The magic is bad. The magic is the monsters, and that's dark fantasy. And then Grimdark is you take out the good guys, right? So there might be people who save everybody, but it's almost despite themselves, or they're not really trying to save her. Maybe it's an accident. KJ Parker does this all the time. If anyone gets saved, it's a complete accident. No one's really trying to be the good person. And like, there's nothing wrong with that. And people find it cathartic. I mean, there's a lot of good reasons people are attracted to that, but I very much wanted to write the other thing. And especially in superheroes, a lot of the superhero stories that are aimed at grown-ups are deconstructions, like Watchmen. What if the superheroes are all bad people, or the boys? Most of the superpowered characters in the boys are not nice. You wouldn't, right there. Something about their power or the way they're raised, whatever, makes them nasty, right? They're bad people. And I'm like, that's fine. Nothing wrong. I love the boys. I'm a big fan, right? But I'm also like, but I've had enough of that. Let me write about like people with superpowers really trying to be the good guys, because I like that, and a little bit of I like it, a little bit of when people are it's what I like. So again, I don't only consume media like that, but I do prefer it, and I took out a lot of the tension. Right, I made my character very potent. I got this idea from Telugu films. So I'm watching all these Telugu films, and by American standards, if you talk to how Americans talk about plot in action movies, they should not work. Because in so many of these and it's not just Telugu, but those specifically really jump out at me as the main character is so competent that you never for a second think, oh, he might lose. You're just like, how cool is he going to, how often will the screen slow down while he beats, how cool are the little images going to be, right? There's like, and I love those movies so much. And I'm like, there's never that moment where you're like, the low point you're supposed to have in the 3-act structure where all is lost moment. Books will tell you have to have that. Into the second act, it has to be an all is lost moment. I'm like, I watched some of these films, and there's no all is lost moment going on here, especially the action comedies, especially from Tollywood, where you're just like the guy's just kicking everyone's butt, and you're just waiting for him for the glove to come off. You watch like Solar, which I don't know if it's a good movie, but I loved it so much. And there's a scene where he's like, people are like hitting him or whatever, and like he's like, no, I can't fight because his mom is like he promised his mom, right? That's the obstacle. He promised his mom. The only thing standing in his way is a promise he made to his mom. Once she says, go ahead, fight them, they're dead. There's no question, right? There's no low point. It's just, is mom going to say it's okay? And I love that so much. I love it.
No, it's very Dragon Ball Z, and I don't know how much you know about this, but the things that you see these heroes do in these South Indian films is actually part of Indian mythology. If you have any idea about their Mahabharata and the Ramayana, those books, they have characters like that who are like modern day Superman or modern day Zeus. Like they can just kick. They're like Dragon Ball Z basically on steroids.
Yeah.
So
I know a little bit about it. Yeah.
So it's actually very organically coming into these movies, which is very nice.
That is interesting. I don't know if I put all that together. I am not an expert on that.
For example, there's this character called Hanuman. He's one of
the Monkey King. Yeah.
The Monkey King. He's basically a one-man ninja army. He's like a one-man commando army, and I love that character in all his incarnations. So these things are built in, those overpowered heroes, and my mom has told me not to fight, so I won't fight. You can kill me. So all these dramatic things, my word is my bond. It's very much part of their culture and religion and everything.
Yeah.
So
And I don't take all of those elements, right? Because it's my own culture, it's my own thing. I actually sometimes I'll have Rohan say, you know, my word is my bond is like good to a point, but at some point also like some other things matter more, right? So like I always fight back against I fight back against some of the tropes in the places where they annoy me, but generally, yeah. So I wanted a character where you're like, really, you read these books and you're rarely it doesn't feel like you don't get those all is lost moments too much, right? Generally, there's some down parts, but they're not that far down, right? That was very deliberate, right? My hero suffering and being down, it's never that far, right? It's always, yeah, you're not too worried. And that was, and that was the question, right? Can I write books where people want to keep reading, even though you don't have this like feeling in your gut, like, oh my God, he's about to die. Like you don't feel that way usually reading my books, but I still were hoping I can pull you through using other things to make you keep reading because you want to know what happens next. Even though you're not afraid for what happens next, you still want to know. And that was the key.
Joe, I remember the first time I reviewed your book or I wrote about it or I talked about it, I used the word comfortable. When I read your books, I feel comfortable. And maybe this is the right word or wrong word, I'm Jaina. It's like cozy science fiction. It's not the world is ending and people have to get you and everybody's snarky. It's not like that. So I really like that tone that you have.
Yeah. No, that's just two things, right? Sorry.
No. I was just going to say, a couple of minutes back, you were talking about the fact that you believe in the fact that people should generally, there's some goodness, and these are just superpowered beings who are just trying to be good. I think there's a portion at the end of book 1, Wistful Ascending, where, Rohan's explaining this whole thing of, it's be nice. It's about, it's about being good. It's about being nice. And that's what makes the whole difference. I think it's really nice because you're talking about these things right now. And I'm just having flashbacks of these chapters and sequences where, very naturally, like where he's had that battle with the Aang and he's trying to explain, why did I not vanquish you completely? Why did I not annihilate you? And a little bit of what you believe is coming out over there. And then it pops up I think, thank you so much because it's not just, it's coming out that you haven't just put these things there as, oh, here's a little bit of a flash. I'll put this in. This is stuff that you really believe in, and it comes across so beautifully. So everything you've just said, it's there in the book.
Oh yeah.
And it's so beautiful for me to, kind of get your version of it. This is like the behind the scenes version of, I've seen Avengers Endgame, and now the two brothers are talking about this is what we were doing, and it's beautiful.
But that's the thing about the first fight scene in the series. Well, the first fight scene, he's getting his butt kicked at the prologue, and that doesn't end, right? But then after that, the station's invaded by these bears, and they're savage looking, and they're ready to, I'm going to eat everybody on the station, and they have guns, and and he stops them without killing anybody, and he's like, because he doesn't need to, because that to me that's the kindness that comes from strength. Right, really, really tough people don't have anything to prove. I've been around. I'm not a particularly tough guy, but I've been around. I've done a lot of martial arts training, and the most dangerous people I met were never going to go pick a fight, because the guy I knew guys. They'd walk in a bar and like I knew this guy. He could kill everyone in that bar, right, or like beat them all. But no desire to pick a fight because why? There's nothing to prove. So people who feel insecure, they go into the bar like I'm gonna show them what I'm made of. I'm gonna prove it to myself and everyone. Like no, the really tough people don't do that. So to me, it was part of that, and part of you're setting the tone for the why are they being aggressive? They're scared. They're terrified. Their people have been slaughtered. They're refugees. They're angry out of fear, and he can diffuse it, and they become friends, and then they end up on the. And then Aang ends up on the cover of book 6 for the first time. We get an Urson on the cover, and Aang was not the Ursons were not originally meant to be a recurring like set of characters. I thought they would disappear after book 1, and then somehow everyone really loved them, and then somehow I find uses for them in every book, and somehow they keep coming. That's probably at least one of the biggest ways I've been influenced by feedback. I think maybe I would have. I mean, you never know. Maybe I would have come to this idea on my own, but I don't know. But people really like the space bears, and I'm like, okay, if you like the space bear, because you see like on Twitter, like the space bears. Is that the book with the space bears? I'm like, other stuff too, but sure, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah.
No, the tone of your book and everything, the relationship between the characters really works for me personally because I was blessed with. I'm blessed with a great family. Loving family. I'm blessed with great friends. I'm blessed with. I'm a musician also, so I have a band. We've been doing it for 30 years. So I've had these long relationships with people. We've had ups and downs, but there's always been this deep affection and love, and you come back to each other. So, which is why whenever I see bonding and brotherhood or some chemistry between characters, banter, I automatically gravitate towards those stories, especially if they're good. Which is why I fell in love with Wistful Ascending from the first book onwards. I just fell in love.
Thank you.
It's one of those rare books where I read them all on Kindle Unlimited, then I bought them. I have to have this on my
Thank you.
Kindle shelves. So,
Yeah.
so Farooq, I've been
Yeah.
monopolizing the conversation. Why don't you ask some questions?
I have to tell you because this is what Shakib was saying, so I'm going to add it over here. You fall in love with Aang, you fall in love with Wei Li, you fall in love with all these characters, but I actually find myself falling in love with the space station.
Yes.
I just love the space station, and you've been talking about the fact that you've been inspired, and there are parts when I think about Hyperion and I think, okay, Omni-Man in some form or the other. Rohan, I can see there's certain things that are coming up, and this is what Rohan is inspired from. Where did you get the inspiration for Wistful? I mean, you've created this beautiful this beautiful world, and
I missed her in the last book, Joe. I really missed Wistful in the last book, but it's good because I know it's a long series, so you're going to bring her back sometime. So it's fine.
I can't put everyone likes in I mean, that's one of the big complaints people have about book 2 is that we have these characters we enjoy, and then all of a sudden we leave them behind, and they either hardly appear or don't appear for a whole book. And a lot of people didn't like. I appreciate the people. I understand, but unfortunately, it's become a sprawling thing by design, right? That was always my intent. So no one can get all the attention we would like. So Wistful. I mean, there's two ways to look at Wistful. Wistful, for the person she is, a little bit of that came from, the artificial intelligence ships. I mean, there's one Moya from Farscape, and then Anne Leckie, Ancillary Justice has some wonderful artificial intelligence. I think I took a lot from that. Thinking about the fact that you if you don't have a biological brain, everything we assume about how people think and work those assumptions go out the window, because you can program a thing. We get hungry, and we have very basic biological drives. Right. Artificial intelligence doesn't have that, right? Unless you make it, unless you plug one in, but you don't have to. So, and then it was a lot of it was just making her mysterious because of the age thing. This idea of very old characters. So she's just another, she's only 45,000 years old, But then I really love List, who's literally a dinosaur, who is literally. Many hundreds of millions of years old, and that's even you're all gonna die, but that I'll remember you fondly for a little bit, that's her. So I like that. I like those deep history things, and I probably really got that first from Anne Rice with the vampire series. You read Interview with a Vampire, and it's all last couple hundred years, and then every subsequent book she'd go back by an order of magnitude. And I thought that was the coolest thing when I read those. The first few. I think after a while I got tired of those. But I don't know if you.
So this is the question I had for you. What I really loved, one of the things I loved was you put me right in the middle of an unfolding story. I'm at that point in my life where I don't want to read about struggling young kids figuring out the magic, unless it's as well written as J.K. Rowling. That's fine. Yeah. But I don't have time for that shit. So I love the fact that we are meeting Rohan. He's a Tao Chief, second class, and we're going about his day-to-day life, and things are happening. We're meeting his friends, and as the books go along, you're widening the universe, right? Bringing us in. So, was this a particular decision you took that I'm not going to start at the beginning? No, Batman Begins. It's more like Zack Snyder.
So
he's 40 years
I had
old,
the brilliant idea. Right?
Deal with it.
This brilliant idea of writing a superhero story with no origin. Right? Yeah. There's no scene of Rohan discovering his powers. I can fly now, right? There's no training. There's no training montage, partially because we've seen it a million times. And I didn't feel like I had anything to add to that. People have asked me for it. They're like, "Oh, are you going to write a story about teenage Rohan fighting crime in New York?" I'm like, I don't think so. Maybe a short, right? Maybe a short, like a little one. If I have an idea, I could. But like a prequel novel. I'm like, no. He's had his hero's journey. He's come out the other side. This is the post-hero's journey. He has become a soldier, and a very good one. And gotten control of his powers and fought wars across the galaxy. And this is him trying to come to terms with what that made him do, or what it turned him into, and trying to come back from that. And to me, that was a more interesting story. People, I think people addressed it less in the superhero world. It's addressed less, and it was more interesting to me. I'm also an older guy. I'm not interested in how like some 18-year-old like punching a wall or whatever, like learning how to, oh my God, look how strong I am. I don't know. But it was me trying to say, I'm not telling a hero's journey story, because we've had plenty of those. And I'm like, excuse me, I literally don't have the patience to write what to me feels like a derivative work. I have tried. I have literally sat down and said, I'm going to write something that we've all seen before to try to sell it. And I get through like a chapter and I get bored. I can't, because I have a day job, like it has to be interesting enough for me to spend spare time doing this. Writing something that we've seen before doesn't interest me enough to pull me away from like my TV and my hobbies and my wife, like it has to be something different to make me spend the hours and the work. So, yeah, I can't do it. So no hero's journey story.
Thank you so much. Farooq, do you want to dive in with a question? Do you have the question in front of you?
Question.
Because I feel like I'm hogging the conversation.
No, that's fine. I think we're getting to where we wanted to go. No, I think we were talking so much about Rohan, and it was all about, Shakib and I always have this thing about, there are always these stories of reluctant heroes coming up, and you've built Rohan into this. He's not just a reluctant hero. I'm just basing it off the first book. He's got all these powers, but he's not always about, I can always use my powers, but at the end, when he takes on the big fight that ends, he's using his wits. So, you don't just have a reluctant hero. You actually have a hero who comes into a fight and he's not looking to go, because that's how it is, even with Superman.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, he goes ahead and he's Superman and boom, 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 punches the hell out of everyone. Yeah. And then you have Rohan, and you've built him up in. As a reader, I'm kind of like, go for it. All right, this is it. This is where he unleashes, this is where he shows his, and it was very interesting the way you pulled it off. And he's like, aha, I'm not going to do what you think I'm going to do. He does something incredibly smart. And was that something that you got inspired from somewhere? Because even Dragon Ball Z and all those other stories, they go explosive. Rohan doesn't.
Action properties, action movies, any kind of action stories are generally, to me, driven by our desire for justice, right? We want the good people to win. We want the bad people to lose. And you can just make that a lot of victory, like a lot of the bad guy getting beaten really hard. That can make it sort of interesting. But we want to know that the good guy won because they're good. We desire that as human. I think that's a very typical human sort of feeling, right? I'm not saying that it works this way in the real world. If anything, the opposite, right? But this is what we want. Being very strong, we don't necessarily see in a martial arts movie, the character being very strong, it's because they worked harder. So that makes us feel that that's a virtue, like that's a character virtue. They're a good person because they worked really hard, and then it's okay that they just win. But if the character is just like talented, it doesn't feel as satisfying. But we see cleverness and thinking about things as a virtue. I'm not sure that's fair, but we do, right? So when a character comes up with a clever solution, some smart solution, if they win because they've been kind, that's another thing you see sometimes, like that guy comes and saves us because we were really nice to him when we didn't have to be, right? Those are more satisfying than just, I'm just stronger. That's why Frieza would make a terrible main character for Dragon Ball Z, because Frieza's not a hard worker. Frieza's just naturally so talented that with a bare minimum of work, Frieza can beat up everybody else. That'd make a terrible main character. I mean, for other reasons too, but for that reason, right? We want the come from some virtues. So for me, for Rohan, like, yeah, he's like naturally very tough, but he's not necessarily stronger. Even if he really let loose on the guys who was beating up in Wistful Ascending, there's three of them and they're just as strong, right? Like, that's not going to do the trick. You can do some of it with martial arts moves. So when a lot of his fights, he's doing things that are clever by martial arts standard, like misdirection and like a jab to set up something else. A lot of my readers don't pick up on that, especially people who aren't into fighting, who don't watch like MMA. Like they don't get it. Like I'll listen to them talk and they're like, I kind of skim that part and I'm like, you missed the part where he's being close. You can't just put it in the fight sequences that he's doing something crafty and tactical. You can, but it can't be just there because half the readers don't care, don't notice. So I try to put in, Rohan does something clever to get out of the situation. I literally will put that in my outline. And the worst as a writer is I will outline my books and I will put that in the outline and I will not say what it is. And I will count on future Joe while writing to think of something clever he can do to save himself in the moment. I'm like, I can't believe I set myself up for this. And I have no idea what he's going to do. But Rohan saves the day doing something clever is the theme. Not the theme, but the structure. Someone says that the books are like same pattern. Rohan has a problem, Rohan solves it. I'm like, that is entirely fair, right? Like, and he doesn't always solve it. I do have his friends solve some of the problems. I throw that in there. Sometimes his friends solve the problems.
I love.
Have you thought this through though?
Together.
Have you?
Is the entire journey mapped out? Is the entire journey of the Hybrid Helix mapped out in your mind? Like, do you know how many books you're going to put out and whatnot?
I know what I want to happen. I don't know if you guys have read Tower of God, but I want a 10-book Tower of God homage. It's a manhwa, Korean. One of the ones you read on your phone, these long vertical guys. It's on Webtoons. Tower of God is long. I really love it. It has flaws. I'm not going to say it's a perfect story, but I really love it. And it does some world building things that I think are fantastic. And I want to do an homage to that. And I don't want to give too much away, but I mean, I definitely have an ending, or at least I know where this. I want the books to end, and I don't know how many books. I keep saying 25 books, but it's kind of a joke, like because the Dresden Files is supposed to be 25 books, and I don't actually have like book. Oh, but then in book 16, he'll like raise a fleet and go to this planet. I don't have that, right? Okay. I just have this I know what's happening in book 7. I have a pretty good idea about 8 and 9, and that's it. After that, it's like very vague. But I have general ideas of like storylines that I want to develop through the books. And if, I could sit down and spend 5 years planning the whole thing, but then I'd be 60. You know what I mean? It works better for me if I'm trying to develop the long range ideas at the same time as I'm writing the book I'm writing, as opposed to sitting down and like really coming up with this really detailed outline chapter by chapter of 25 books. That would have taken me forever. And I probably would have ended up changing most of it, right? Because I would have had better ideas. Because if it takes you 12 years to write the series, you're not going to have no ideas for 12 years, right? You're going to, so I left a lot of room. So there's things already that I know I didn't plan. I don't think I planned the whole storyline with Hyperion when I started, but there's a lot of like vague stuff. And then I get an idea and I'm like, oh, this works. This fits into the overall, but like overall, it's got to be Rohan saves the world. What that means, you won't know until I get there. Right. But it has to be Rohan saves the world, but it has to be from a non-obvious place. So he started as a guy who's trying to not save the world, who doesn't think the world can be saved. He's just going to like try to do his little part for his little corner. In book 1, he's not trying to save the world. This is the last thing he wants, right? And then eventually you have to get him there, but yeah, he has to earn it. He has to earn it. And it's funny because I think some readers probably wanted Wistful Ascending, wanted a series of books that was just the same thing over and over again. Because you could have just had him on Wistful, right? And had a monster of the week. I don't know, you know that phrase, right? Like something shows up at the station and he deals with it. And then the next book, another thing shows up and he deals with it. And maybe once in a while there's an away mission, but generally speaking, nothing really changes. And you could have written a series like that. And it might have sold better. I don't know. But like that wasn't, again, my heart wasn't in that. I really wanted a sweep. I wanted character growth. And every book, Rohan has to make some significant mistakes and like fix them or learn from them. Do better. Every book, there's some like, that's the thing I have to figure out in every book. Like, what's the antagonist? Sharks, a vampire, whatever, right? And then it's like, how will Rohan screw up? And it's like, if you've read the books, you know how he screws up in each book. And sometimes it's more subtle than others, but generally speaking, that's the book by book. And I don't want to repeat any of the mistakes. That's the other problem, right? Because I hate that. In sitcoms where like it's like in every episode the characters have learned nothing from the previous episode. They make this like Frasier. Frasier was a sitcom. I don't know if you guys, that it was popular here. And like I loved it, but it was the same every episode. He made the same mistakes he did in the previous. Like he never learned. It's like I'm not doing that. I'm not. Did
you catch the revival, the 10-episode revival, Frasier?
I did not.
That was really good. That was really
was
good.
it?
It was actual character
okay.
growth. It was really good. It was really good.
Okay.
The actual character growth, and he makes new mistakes. and he's learned from his old mistakes. So
That's good.
it's
That's
really,
good.
really good. It's really good. Very
Oh,
well
I
written,
should catch
well
that.
acted,
I should catch
fantastic.
that. Thank
It's just
you.
10
Yeah.
episodes, so if you have
All
time,
right.
check it out.
Okay.
No. I'm just gonna jump in with this one. So we're talking about television, and suppose in the near future, because this happens all the time nowadays, someone comes to you and tells you, "Let's make a television series out of it." They tried with the Judgment Files, didn't work really. But if someone comes to you and tells you, "Let's
Disney comes to you and tells you, we messed up Star Wars. Now I want to work with Wistful Ascending. Right,
Who's
Farooq?
Rohan?" Yeah. Who would you cast as Rohan? Who would be the main cast?
Ram Charan. See, okay.
Oh, wow.
Let's be fair. Like if Hollywood actually came to me with like a big check, I would probably take it. Like
Yeah, of
regardless.
course.
But if they tried to cast a white guy as Rohan, it would really bother me. I'm not saying I wouldn't take the check. But I will say it would really bother me. And there's a chance I wouldn't take the check. There's a chance I would turn it down because, to me, like, I mean, again, the whole point of making him half Indian was an homage to these films, this media that inspired me. And I'm not saying anything important about being South Asian in these books, right? There's little winks to the culture, but really not much. Like that's not what it's about. But it was still, it mattered to me. I made sure like the guy who does these covers are based on these covers are painted by Chris McGrath, who does the Dresden covers, the same artist. But he uses photo references, and the model he uses is an Indian guy, right? Like I made sure of that, right? So I don't know. I'm trying. There's a lot of actors. I'm trying to think of names, but that's my first pick.
Think I can come up with a better answer than that based on what you've created in the books and just the cover alone. I guess Ramcharan would be my guess for Rohan as well. Wow.
I mean, I would be happy with like anyone, like almost anyone I've seen in like an action film. Like, I guess the right age might matter. Like, well, this right. I love Shah Rukh Khan. I think he's terrible at action, or at least at fighting. I think his fight scenes are awful. I mean, I watched him and I cringe. I love him so much because that's how I got into Telugu films. It started with Bollywood films and it was really just on Netflix, where like I saw a suggestion and I was really bored and I'm like, what the hell? I'll try one of these, because Bollywood, white people in America don't 5-6 years ago weren't watching a lot of Bollywood, right? That wasn't a thing that was in our consciousness. We would not have heard of like Shah Rukh Khan. I don't think I'd heard of Shah Rukh Khan in 2016. I don't think I'd heard the name. So I got into that. Any of those guys. Yeah. And I don't really think about who I would cast for. I mean, my dream cast for Tamara would be Rani Mukherjee. If I could get a young Rani Mukherjee into green makeup and antennae, because that's my dream actress. At my age, I don't know. And I don't know if I thought about it for anyone else. I guess Aang would have to be CGI. And I don't really have a person in mind for Wei Li. So I don't know. Dream casting. I don't know. I don't spend enough time on it. But I saw Ram Charan and I think RRR or maybe something else, and I was like, yeah, that would be good. That was the most popular. Sorry.
No. It's just that when I'm reading a book, it's like a movie's playing out in my head, and now I know as I read the next few books on the series, I'm going to be seeing his face in Rohan, and that's how it's going to flow out. I'm going to see Rani Mukherjee and all those other faces through the stories now. Wow.
Yeah.
So through this hangout session, I'm looking at my list of questions, Farooq. I think we've hit most of them. Without once referring to the document, we've hit most of the questions.
And someone's asking about the diplomacy of the knife, which I did just read in review on Goodreads. Jonathan, you can read my review of Diplomacy of the Knife on Goodreads.
All right, let's take a look at some of the comments. So this is Kaiser Kabir. So first comment on Facebook. Thank you so much,
nice.
Kaiser. Sifat is here. Shakib Bhai Jose, thank you so much. Suki23 is here. You got the gift of writing. Glad to have you here in Book Dawn. Love from Bangladesh.
Thank you so much.
So Jannatul Mafi is a big supporter of our show, and he gives me a lot of great suggestions.
Oh, nice.
Good to have you here. Prince of Thorns was a very enjoyable read for me, in part because of the positive trajectory this book took to its telling. Fantastic. This was fast-paced story with a powerful narrative told in the first-person perspective. The plot was exciting and engrossing with a great mix of action and intrigue. Josh.
True.
Um,
Absolutely.
Jonathan Murphy continues, been reading Boys in the Valley by Philip Fracassi. Oh, this is the scariest coming-of-age horror. I don't want coming-of-age. I've read since Stephen King's It. Oh, I love it. 100 pages or so into this book, and it's all horror all the time. Oh, okay, maybe I'll check it out. Nice.
There you go.
Is Joe British? We have answered that question.
Yeah. I was cheating. I was looking at the comments over here on the side of my screen.
Channel naam change kora holo keno. We'll talk about that later. This is hands down the best space opera book I've ever read. I cannot express how much I enjoyed Hybrid Helix. Fantastic book.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That's so kind. Thank you. I'm really glad.
So hello everyone, says Zerex. Question to Mr. Berne. Your opinion about Murakami. Yes, I don't know if you've read any Hikaru Murakami. Farooq, am I getting the name right?
Haruki,
I know the name.
Haruki Murakami.
Yeah.
So he's a Japanese author.
Yes.
He writes magic realism and he's bloody brilliant. That's all I can say. He's amazing. Very sweet. It's like reading cozy manga fantasy, I would say. So it's beautifully written. Amazing.
I mean, there's a lot. I have very particular tastes, and I tend to not like magical realism because it bothers me. I'm like,
I don't
well,
like either,
like,
but I love Murakami.
I've heard only good things, right? I've heard a lot of people talk about Murakami on like book 2, but I have not encountered it myself. And unfortunately, I don't have enough time to read like I used to because I'm writing and I'm working, and that takes up a lot of time. And then a lot of my reading is because I'm part of the indie author community, right? I'm friends with a lot of these other writers, so I often feel like I'm reading stuff that isn't necessarily what I would pick for myself because I want to support my friends. So a lot of my book reading ends up taking up, and this isn't. I don't want to make it sound like I'm complaining. A lot of these books are really good, but it's not necessarily what I would be picking up myself or just for me. So I have not read Murakami. Sorry.
Got it. This is one of the Bangladeshi booktubers. He's really good. This is Musa bin Mujib. So good to have you here, Musa. Nazmul Hussein is saying, glad to hear about Tower of God. Enjoyed reading the manhwa. Oh, so I didn't know Korean comics was called manhwa.
Yeah. There's an app called Webtoons that has a lot of stuff on it where you can get it for free. Like they'll make you pay for like the latest chapter, but if you read like Tower of God, it's going to take you a year to get there anyway. So like, don't worry,
it's like One Piece.
And the format is fascinating because it's a comic, but it's a one long vertical strip. It's written to scroll on your phone, right? Like that. And you can get people who have cut it up into pages, but it's not written in pages. It's written in a vertical strip. They all are.
Scroll down.
Interesting.
You scroll on your phone, but that's how they were written specifically for that. And once I realized, I'm like, it like blew my mind when I realized like this is why it's laid out this way. It's like a wholly modern format. Like it's not meant to be printed. Yeah. It's really interesting. Anyway, it's a good story. It's a fantasy, like a science fantasy kind of thing. Yeah.
Jonathan Murphy continues. Have you guys read The Diplomacy of the Knife? C.M. Kaplan writes with the frenetic vibrancy that makes The Diplomacy of the Knife impossible to put down. Kaplan also strikes just the right balance between fantasy and science fiction in this post-apocalyptic world.
2 apocalypses have happened.
Okay. First, magic and technology. Wow. Everything that I loved about The Fall is all there is.
That's the first. Fall is all there is the first book in the series.
Okay.
So the series has a name which I can't remember. Connor's a friend of mine.
I think I've bought this book. I went on a buying spree. I think end December, and I think I've bought this book.
No, it's more like weird fiction. If it's anything, it's got like a lot of weird technology, a lot of like weird pseudo magical stuff going on. Main character is an autistic. So first person point of view from an autistic main character who's one of quadruplets, which Connor also is. So that's a sort of really interesting, like look into a character from an author's background that you wouldn't think of as a thing. It's very frenetic, weird technology. The Falls Others went pretty far. I think it was a finalist in Spiffbo or Spacefic, one of the big indie contests. I should know this, but I wasn't prepared to talk about Connor's stuff. But
I'll be honest, these contests, they're not, I don't know. For example, I think Mushroom Blues was very, very highly rated in these Then I read it. It's.
It didn't
I'm
do
not gonna say
anything.
it wasn't for me. It wasn't very well written. It just was not very. The story was not well presented. People can like it definitely. So I was surprised that okay, so why is it getting so much acclaim? So I'm not gonna put you on the spot. Um, so,
Let's
but
not.
this was, I think, one of the finalists in
Yeah.
the SPFF something. And I was like, okay,
Spitball,
so
yeah,
basically,
yeah.
Spitball. So I guess everybody has to do a little bit of schmoozing everywhere. Doesn't matter what it is. So I don't know, or maybe they genuinely liked it. But yeah. So how is your time in these indie communities? Like, what do you get out of them? What do you do with all you indie authors in these communities and whatnot?
Well, the big thing is, that is a good question. The big thing is like I'm on like Blue Sky, Twitter, and Discord are the big ones. Some people do spend time on Facebook, but it's connecting with other authors. You share the little stories. Like you mentioned Daniel Green. There's a big thing about him going down right now. I don't know if you saw the video. He's been I don't want to get into it, but one of those accused of sexual assault by another booktuber. I think the video just came out today. So we gossip and it's a serious thing. I don't mean to make light of it. I don't know how it's going to fall out. Like we're in that stage where like I'm inclined. You don't know, right? One person has said a very horrific story. I'm not saying she's not telling the truth. I'm not
About
saying
Daniel Green.
Yeah. And I don't know him well enough to make any kind of comments on does this seem true or not. I have no idea. I'm always like I'm not going to go to a guy's house and like punch him in the face. That's all I'm saying. I'm not doing anything. But we talk about craft. We talk about our favorite books. And we recognize each other. That's kind of we're doing. Because what I do is very solitary, right? Like, if you're playing like pickup basketball with your friends and you like sink a great shot or you score a goal in like a game, soccer, your friends are like high fiving you and like, you get that feedback. But as a writer, you can write a book and just release it and like no one here cares. I mean, my wife actually read my books recently, but like that was recent. That wasn't for years. She had never even read anything. It's not really her type of stuff. So we give each other a lot of that kind of support and like we retweet each other's things and we share a lot of sort of information. There's a lot of stuff you need to know to self-publish well, especially if you don't want to waste a lot of money. A lot of it's very like what's the right way to format your book, what's the font size I need so my book is legible. These things are not intuitive. Like my first printing of Wistful Ascending, like it's really hard to read because I didn't know you shouldn't print a book in 9-point Times New Roman. You trust me.
Okay.
But I didn't know, right? And I actually, but you learn these things from Discord. In my case, I actually had a graphic designer who was working for me for something else. I'm like, could you just give me some like basic advice? Because like you don't know. How does KDP work? How do you get your stuff published? Like all that. We share all that stuff now. So if you're part of one of these communities, it's going to save you a lot of time and trouble if you're an indie author. So I highly recommend, getting on Discord and making friends. And the other big thing is having a critique community is really important, at least early, while you learn. And I was on one Discord that I think I probably got more out of this one. Just it fell apart because of politics, but there was this thing where you would put in chapters and you would put your chapter up for critique and it would be a Google Doc with comments enabled. So you get comments like, oh, I think this word should be, this is not so much this is misspelled, but this sentence should be rephrased. This isn't clear. This character emotional arc changed too fast. And other people would respond to your comment. So you might have 6 or 8 people read your chapter and they would, no, actually, I disagree with that, right? So valuable because you can see what the consensus is. You can see maybe this person had a point. And then you had to critique 2 other works before your work could go up for critique. And you learn so much doing that to someone else. And these are 3,000 word chapters or chunks, right? Something like that, right? If you're not familiar with, maybe 10 pages of text. So you're not sitting on beta read your novel for you. That's a big investment. These are not. This is a chapter. And honestly, if you got halfway through and it was terrible, you just stopped. I left 8 comments. I'm done, right? And that happened because most writing is terrible. I hate to say it, but most writers are not good, and everyone who tries gets better, and some of them never get. That's just how it is. But that's fine. You learn a lot. Like, what is it about this terrible story that made it terrible? And once you can figure that out, you learn so much about writing. So I think anyone who, and I don't have a group like that anymore. Again, that Discord fell apart, but something like that I think is invaluable. You know, and it really was small chunks, in depth, and with comments. And comments, never let other people edit your stuff that way because it'll be confusing. Has to be comments.
So here's another question. I forgot to ask this
Sure.
question. Like, so we were talking about Dresden Files, and you said that they're standalone books, but truly, the books from 1 to 6 or 1 to 7 are more or less standalone. But after you cross over at a certain time, I think book 6 or 7, they're not really standalone. Like if you just pick up book number 10, you won't really know where things are coming.
They're
from.
critical.
Yes,
Yeah, they're
there is
critical
a-
back points. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a discrete chapter in the bigger Dresden story, but you're gonna not pick up on a lot of things, you know. So similarly, your series, the Wistful and Hybrid Helix. So here, you can't just come in book 4 and enjoy it the way I'm enjoying it, right? So this is a very dangerous decision, risky decision, or how do you look at this? That it's not like Agatha Christie, it's not like Sherlock Holmes, you know. You cannot just
Right.
pick up any book and.
Right.
How do you look at this? Is it very risky?
there's
Is it worth the risk?
They're those archetypical characters, right? Like Sherlock Holmes and Conan, and you don't need to have read any Conan story to read another Conan story, right? Like it's never going to matter. James Bond, historically, I think they're changing that now in the films, but historically, James Bond was. So there's this Jack Reacher. I don't know if you guys have read that, but so it's a thing. So you gain something and you lose something, right? What you gain is you gain the fact that a reader can pick up any book and be you can pick up any Jack Reacher and you're fine, right? It doesn't matter that you haven't read the others, Sherlock Holmes. What you lose is some of that some of those feelings you get from the development and the turns, right? So there's a turn at the end of book 5. There's the finale of book 5. I don't know. I don't think I could most people like it. They respond positively to the big change that happens at the end of book 5. My book 5, and I feel like it wouldn't have meant any, like if you hadn't read the first 4, you wouldn't appreciate what you've been on a journey. You've been taken
That was
somewhere.
one of the most satisfying moments for me in your entire series. I've read all 6 books.
Thank you.
That turn in how you ended book 5, because I didn't see it coming. You handled very nicely. It just came out of left field, but when that happened, it made sense.
Oh. Surprising yet inevitable. That's my favorite expression in writing.
Yes.
Surprising yet inevitable. I heard it from Brandon Sanderson. I don't remember if he invented it or if he took it from someone else. I don't remember what he said. But that's the thing, right? Because anyone can surprise you. That's easy, right? You can just throw something out of nowhere and like, ooh, I'm surprised. But it has to be surprise where once you see it, you're like, oh, that the groundwork for this was laid with all these different hints and all these different subtleties in the dialogue and the moments. Like actually, this was set up, and that's a whole different thing. And that's my number one goal as a writer. Is I love those, and you can only do those if you really have things change over time, and if you write a lot of books and about the same characters. And this is one beautiful thing about indie. You're talking about indie before, right? Tor would never publish a 25-book series from an unknown writer. Right? There's no way on earth they would have Return of the Griffin would have sold and they would have cut my contract at best case scenario from traditional publishing. Never would have been able to do what I'm doing, right? Which is I can keep writing these and I can just keep losing money every book because I have a lucrative day job, right? And I can just chunk these out and I can have this thing that in my mind, look, I'm writing what I love. To me, this is an epic story and I can have this. No one can stop me. Except maybe my wife. She can cut the purse strings. But honestly, really, at this point, I could edit this myself, I think, right? It wouldn't be as good as if when I pay for line editing, but I'm way better a writer on a sentence by sentence level than I was 5 years ago. You can't help it. I've been through many, many rounds of editing, going through the book multiple times, right? I could probably do it myself if I had to. And I could get cheaper covers, right? Like the Suppression of Power covers. This costs a fifth as much as this, right?
Wow.
Right. So no offense, right? I could honestly just, I could get unknowns to do a comic book style cover. The covers are the one big fixed expense I have, but I could even do these for no money or very little money, maybe even make money if I really, I'm not doing that because I like the painted covers and Chris McGrath and I love that stuff. Right. But, and I can afford it right now. It's like, I always tell people cause I'm spending a lot of money. Like, well, I don't have a boat. Or a Mercedes, right? Like, I mean, people waste money on, like, they have hobbies, they have money, things they spend real money on, right? I have a friend with a boat. I don't have a boat. This is what I have.
Oh, absolutely. I
but-
totally get you because I have a band and we spend money on the band. So,
Yeah.
so
No, but
my
it is a
question
risk.
Yeah, it is a
Yeah.
risk, but you want to take this risk, right?
This is the thing I wanted to write, right? I mean, I almost didn't have a choice, and this is the thing that interested me, and this is the story I wanted to tell, and I wanted it to be, you know, have that epic scope, but in pieces. And if that loses me people, because people will hear like, oh, book 13 comes out, but you really want to read the first 12 first. Well, that's true of other things. Like, it worked. I mean, Cradle, like, you don't want to read book 7 of Cradle, right? Like, you have to read books 1 to 6 to get book 7. It's kind of not that different. And my goal, I thought these books would sell a lot because I thought this idea of a Marvel movie made into a novel would be really like, I thought it would be a good hook, but I did not write these to make money. Like, I know people who are trying. I know people who are like, you know, I need to quit my day job because it's killing me, and this is my chance to make enough money so I can stop working. Like, I was never like, I would love that, right? But that wasn't the goal, right? Because if I wanted to do that, I'd be writing different things. Because there are things you can write that have a much better chance of making real money, and this is not what I'm doing. Do I hope it makes me money? Sure, but you know, if I really wanted to make money, I'd be writing. I hate to say it, but I'd be writing romance novels. Or I'd be doing the Royal Road thing with a lit RPG. I mean, I feel like I could learn how to write a lit RPG if I read a few. I have confidence in, but that was never my goal, you know. So yeah. So I'm taking a financial risk, but I think I had this very clear vision of 25 of these with this cover and this like lined up on a shelf and like being like the pride of someone's collection and like, read this whole thing. This is cool. And that I don't know. I like that.
So I get it. I absolutely get it. Farooq,
No,
actually,
you
I just
sound
want to ask
like-
this question. I just want to ask this
Go,
question
go.
On the topic of editing. So I'm a sellout. I love AI. Bring on the robots. I want a butler. Give it to me all. So the reviews that I put on Amazon when I review your books or other authors' books and whatnot, basically I write something very fast, and then I give it to my chat GPT and I tell him to just punch it up. He does that and I put it in. And I have no problem with that because what he writes, it would take me at least half an hour to write. And I don't have the time to write a review. So I'm absolutely open for things that I don't have time on. I want to use chat GPT and other things. So editing is something that could be, most probably is already being used by authors. So is that something you're thinking of right now? What are your views on using AI as a tool for your writing, as a tool?
So there's different levels to it, right? So authors tend to be very reflexively, and most in my community, my end of the author world, which isn't the whole thing, but a corner of it, right, tends to be very anti AI. There are tools like Pro Writing Aid, which uses an AI to like figure out where you can put your commas. I have less problem with that, except that I have sort of an ethical dilemma, which is that a lot of these things are trained on stolen work, and that bothers me on an ethical level. And I wish there was an alternative that wasn't. And there's an ecological issue about like how much power they're consuming and how much water is being used to cool the data centers. I have concerns about that. From a craft perspective, I feel like the less see the problem with what ChatGPT does, with what any AI machine language learning model will do, is it'll give you sort of an average. It'll give you this is what people have typically done before. This is something very similar to that. By its very nature, it can't innovate or give you something new or cool. And so as a writer, I'm like, that's the last thing I need. But can I stop other people from doing it? No, I won't. I actually discontinued my Pro Writing Aid subscription when I realized just how much of the generative AI they were using. Because it's one thing to tell me where to put the commas. It's another thing to tell me, suggest another paragraph that I could reword this whole thing and create this whole new, like describe a park, and it puts in a park description. I'm like, at that point, why write? Because the whole point about me writing is in how I describe the park. I want to put very subtle clues as to how my character is thinking and feeling and how he views the world into that park description. Otherwise, why am I describing the park? Just because there's a park there? Like, no. I want to tell you, I want everything to do many things, right? I want every sense, every description, every fight scene to tell you a few different things. Excuse me, tell you a little about the character, a little about their emotional state, a little about the state of the world, what they see, tell you stuff. AI can't do that because it's only going to know I described a park, just like everyone else describes a park. It's not your park. It's not giving all that other stuff to it. So, I mean, ChatGPT is great for rote things like letters of recommendation. You put in your 5 keywords for a letter of recommendation. It's going to give you, but no letter of recommendation is supposed to be like literary. No one wants that. The person reading it, they really just want to know, is this person like, they're looking for the 5 keywords, and they have to extract that from the letter recommendation. So you use ChatGPT to write the letter, you check it to make sure it's right, you send it off, and you've accomplished your job, and everyone's better off. So I get it. Right? I get it.
Yeah. I'm going to get into something. All right. I'm just going to get into something because you sound like, your interviews, your books, and right now talking to you, you sound like someone who's got a million things going on in his head at the same time. And you're in indie communities. You're reading stuff. You're getting inspired from stuff. So I have to ask: is the Hybrid Helix the only thing that's happening on the literary front from you, or do you have other ideas, other projects that we're going to be seeing?
I have this little puppy that no one reads.
Partial function, yeah. I've read half of it. I've not finished it.
Okay. So this was when I got kicked out of Spiffbo, the self-published fantasy blog off, when I lost. I felt like part of the reason I lost in the first round was because I was, Wistful Setting is not really a fantasy in the typical sense of the term. There's no dwarves and swords and stuff. I'm like, I can write a fantasy. I'm going to write a regular fantasy, and I'm going to enter it in this damn contest, and I'm going to win. So I wrote this book in like a month. And it's not a typical fantasy. And of course, I put too much in there that's weird. And this also takes place in the same world as the Hybrid Helix, although it's not
the Rift,
super.
Right?
The Rift Gate. The
wave. You call it something.
The wedge. The dinosaurs are called the wedge.
Sorry.
The wedge. Yeah, it's the same way. I mean, it's the same place we go in Shadow of Hyperion. It's a different part of the world because it's a very large ring world, right? So it's almost infinite, basically. So it's a different corner, but same. And I have ideas for 2 more books in that series that I may or may not get to. That didn't sell any copies, so I'm not super that's part of it, right? Like, no one's buying it. I'm less motivated, but I will very likely get to that at some point. I did. I have an idea. So I was inspired by Solar. When I watched Solar, I got this idea for a character, a setting where the sort of a crime city where everyone, all the people are criminals, and then I set up a whole thing where it's like a combination of like Solar meets Stargate SG-1, and main character is like a thief, and it had that the 2 main characters that had that feeling of loyalty that I got from Solar, where these 2 are loyal to each other beyond reason, and that was going to be the crux of the series. And I wrote like 5 chapters, and that's something I'd love to get to one day. But it's also about time, and it's about if I suddenly sold 200,000 copies of Wistful Ascending, I could quit my day job, and then I do some of this stuff. But that's not happening right now. And then I created a fantasy e-zine last year. I ran it once a week. I released an issue for 24 weeks with 1 chapter from my own ongoing serialized fantasy story called The Grim Dwarf. The magazine is called Grim Dwarf Magazine. You can still get it. It's free. There are links. You go to my Patreon. Follow my Patreon. There's a free tier, so you don't have to pay anything.
Okay.
It's on Patreon. But you can find links to all the issues there. I think you can download them all. And I got a bunch of short stories from friends. So everything had like 3 things in it, like 1 chapter of mine and like 2 things from someone else and 2 other people. And that was fun. It was more work and more distraction. And I realized that I can't do all this stuff. It was a cool idea. It didn't really take off, and I didn't get a lot of downloads. I think it was cool. And I collected that story into 1 volume that I never released, but one of these days I probably will. But really, I mean, I want to finish the Hybrid Helix, and anything that detracts from that, I'm going to have to drop, because I'm 54, right? Like my dad died at 58, so like I need to outlive him just to have a shot, right? At finishing this. So like there's that side of things, right? Like I can't just put it off for 2 years. You know, if I were 35, I'd write a book every year, a year and a half, you know, but I can't do that. It's not realistic. So yeah.
Well, I'm very happy to hear you're going to be focusing on the Hybrid Helix, because when
Yeah.
Jim Butcher suddenly stopped writing Dresden and he put up, I think, Codex Alera or something. And Farooq, I think you've read some of those. And
I've read that. Yeah.
And I've bought those books, and I won't read it till you finish Dresden Files. And I know, obviously, he's gonna do whatever he wants to do, but I'm like, please come back and finish Dresden Files. Please do that.
Next book's done. He just announced it. I don't know if you saw. He announced it like a day or two ago, I think. Really recently, that the next book it's done. It's going through edits, but he finished the draft of the next Dresden.
Oh wow.
So-
My problem is I finished from 1 to I think Battlegrounds at one go. Was it Battlegrounds or the one before Battleground? Peace Talks or something. I don't know. So I read it at one go, and then suddenly he's like writing other things. So now I've decided I'm gonna buy them and keep them till the entire series is finished. Then I'm gonna read
So you're spoiled. I read Stormfront when he published it,
I
right?
did
So
as
like,
well.
yeah,
Oh,
it's been a
okay.
waiting game. It's been a waiting game for every book for me.
Okay. Well, life
been a
stuff.
waiting
You
game.
need your little you need your little wins. For me, reading all of those together was a big win.
That's
Loved it,
cool. That
absolutely.
is cool. I reread them not like a year or two ago because we were doing on Joe Carroll's channel. We did a like Dresden discussion. It's like I better reread them if we're going to do this. So I reread them like 2 years ago, I think, and I love them. But you know, you can only do that so often. I was doing that with Wheel of Time. I was reading Wheel of Time when it came out. First book came out. Second book came out. I reread the first one, read the second one. Third book came out. I reread the first and the second and the third. Got to the fourth and I stopped. And I still have not finished the Wheel of Time. So I was like, can't do it. I tried a couple of years ago or last year. I think I tried. I read the first two and I was like, I can't. I just can't. It's too long and not enough stuff happens per page. So I was like, I can't afford the time. I have things going
We
on.
agree.
So you
We agree.
finished Wheel of
Focus
Time,
on
the
your
entire
stuff.
thing, right?
We're waiting for your stuff.
You finished the entire Wheel of Time, right, Joe?
No, I read the first. I've read the first four, but on the last go around, I got to book two, and I couldn't go any further.
So Sanderson finished it for the author, and everybody loves it. Daniel Green loves it. I'm on book 5, and I'm struggling through. Apparently, it gets really meandering in the middle, and then things pick up towards the end. So I'm just stuck there. And what am I doing? I'm reading your books. So
Thank you.
it's a win-win for all of us.
I actually like. I mean, I try to maintain a fairly high pace because I value my readers' time, and I don't think that. I mean, but there's a different experience you get from reading Wheel of Time or reading like Sanderson stuff, right? It is more drawn out. It's more leisurely. I think I don't know. I want to say it's for people who have less to do, aren't as busy. Maybe you're young. I appreciated that stuff when I was younger, right? Because I would have a whole summer with nothing to do but lay on the couch and read. That sounds fantastic, but like, I don't have time to just sit down and just read for a summer anymore. I don't have summers like that, right? So it's a different intent. But I mean, I'm very specifically trying not to do that with the Hybrid Helix. That's why I don't know if you noticed, but all the books are almost exactly the same length. Right? They're all between 118 and 120,000 words, which is a very narrow margin and not super easy to pull off. But it keeps me honest, right? I don't get to do the meandering travel scenes too much because it's only 120,000 words. I got to get through the storyline, and I got to pack in a lot of plot lines or I get bored. So,
No, I love the pacing you have, Joe. I love the pacing,
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
which is why I always use the words. It's very comforting for me. Your books are very comforting because after a frenetic day at the office and life and whatnot, I sit down with the books and just enjoy. Like when I used to read Harry Potter, it was like when I finished Harry Potter, when J.K. Rowling finished the book, I felt like I was saying goodbye to my friends. I was not saying goodbye to a book. Right? So when I finish one of your books, I feel like, oh shit, I'm saying goodbye to these people for a while now. So I'm not a big fan of frenetic pacing and lots of action. So what you're doing absolutely works for me. I just absolutely love it. And it's
Thank you.
been over 1 hour, 38 minutes, Joe. Thank you so much. So we can call it quits if you want. Farooq, do you have anything else? Joe, do you want to talk about anything else? Or we can just say goodbye.
No, I just want to thank you because, like Shakib's towards the end of it, so he's getting to the point where he's eagerly waiting for your other books. Otherwise, he's going to have to say that goodbye to your friends. And it's just this thing I've grown up with. There's certain times when, one of the best moments of my life is when I start on something. Like with Game of Thrones that happened and then I got stuck. With Dresden Files that happened and then it got stuck. But when you're at the beginning of that journey, you know how beautiful it's going to be after 2 books. And, I'm just so happy because because I know for the next couple of weeks, you've made my life beautiful. Because like Shakib said, we're going to come back from work. We're going to come back from other kinds of stress. And there's this beautiful little story. There's this beautiful book to look forward to. And thank you so much because it means a lot to us. And I'm really looking forward to seeing your 25 books happen because there are people on this side of the planet who are just looking forward to seeing how this story progresses. And thank
really
you. I
makes
know
me,
that it's early morning. You're over where you're at. We're wrapping up our day, but it's afternoon. Okay, all right. So
it's afternoon. It's afternoon. We're good. I have a funny story. So like my wife's a pediatrician, right? So like she gets stuck at work. She's literally saving some kid's life potentially, right? So she gets a call late at night, right? And I work in the financial data world, right? So like if I get a call late at night, it's because someone doesn't have a file of prices on time, right? So it feels we're getting the same calls in the middle of the night, but it feels very different, right? But so I'm like, I'm not really contributing anything like meaningful the way she is, and she trains doctors. That's her day job. She trains other pediatricians. But I remember once there was a person read my book and she's a nurse. She's like, I was having a really rough week at work and coming home and I read your book and it made me feel better. Like I could go and face work then again. I'm like, damn, I'm a healthcare worker, right? I'm basically saving lives too, right? Here, I looked at my wife. I'm like, you're not special anymore, sweetheart. This guy here, right? I'm contributing. I didn't say that to her. Oh God, the fact that I'm still alive tells you all. I didn't tell a Saletti woman, no, you're not important anymore. That I wasn't going to get away with that. No. Yeah. So but that's the whole point, right? Like, presumably, a lot of people feel like things are like in the world are tough. I do. News. I guess almost no matter who you are, things are tough. It depends on which newscast you think is awful, right? But you write these books so that you can get away from that for a bit, and that's largely the point. So I'm really gratified that it works for some people, that's what they're getting out of it, because that was the idea, like chill out and have some samosas with Rohan and drink some tequila or whatever.
No, and Joe, at the beginning of this today's episode, you said something like, it's light reading and you don't have to think too much, but there are things to think about. And I totally agree with you. Like people have this idea that for you to think about something, it has to be very heavy and serious, and there has to be a lot of signboards pointing to this is serious stuff. Versus the way you write is very light. For example, let me just give you an example. For example, Terry Pratchett. I don't know if you've read Terry Pratchett. So he's absolutely like one of my favorite authors, and I've read everything he's written. So those are basically farce or comedies, right? But there's very, very important messaging in all of his books. They're either political satires or religion satires or satires of society. So many messages through comedy, through great characters. So I feel the same when I'm reading your books. Yes, there's a light touch. I love using this phrase, light touch. I love stories that have a light touch. They're talking about a lot of important things, but with a deft and light touch. And you have the gift for that.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. You can put messages in things in a heavy-handed way or in a light-handed way, right? And it's always, I'm always trying I am trying to put messages in, but maybe in a light-handed way. I'll tell you, I planned, I wrote Wistful Ascending when the 2020 elections, it's between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. The election was going on. Okay. And, you're going to have to guess which side I was on, but regardless, so a huge theme in the books is that Rohan has been trapped by people putting him in a situation where he has to take the lesser of two evils. And a huge theme of the books is he breaks out of that by saying, I see what the two evils are, and I'm going to find a third choice that's better. And I'm not necessarily saying I'm in favor of third-party voting in the U.S. That's a very complicated topic that we're not talking about here. But I think a lot of people like me sort of felt trapped in this sort of lesser of two evils scenario. And I'm like, let's fantasize about a situation where you can come up with a different, another answer to that. So, but you can, if you hit people in the head with it too much, which I did in Return of the Griffin, because you guys have both read I guess you both have read the original Return of the Griffin, and it probably meant less to you than it did to American readers. The proud guys, right? It's not as immediate to you guys as it was to American readers, but a lot of American readers felt that took them out of the story. It broke immersion because it was too close. The satire was too like neck and neck. The mega, right? Make Earth Great Again. The guys, the Make Earth Great Again hats, which I still think is hilarious. I love that joke. I had to take, but it's very grounded in like today U.S. contemporary politics to the point where, and I took that stuff out. I removed it because I was like, it's breaking them. Like it's not just for readers who were on the other side of the political fence. Readers who were on the same side as me, but they just didn't come to the Hybrid Helix for that kind of in your face. This is contemporary American politics done again. They wanted an escape from that, and like I was taking that away from them, and I realized that very late. So I rewrote the book. I just took those elements out, which was only about a few dozen pages worth of material swapped out. I swapped out for another villain group who's not politically coded, right? It was the same story, but yeah. So I learned my lesson. Late. Took a lot of reviews, to realize, I screwed up there, but I did. And again, I think if you're going to write political satire from the get-go, it's different. If you wrote that story from book one where that was the thing, the guys in mega hats, whatever, like that's fine. But that wasn't Wistful Ascending, right? Wistful Ascending was very divorced from that, and then coming back to it in book two was not a good move. So I switched it. New. If you see the version with the new typography, this font, that's the new text. If anyone is watching this and has read Return of the Griffin and wants the new version digitally, please feel free to DM me. I can send you a link. If you have it on Kindle, I think if you just remove the download and re-download it, it shouldn't cost you anything. You'll get the new version. But if anyone
that means I should have the new version then.
Okay.
I think I've got the new version. Right.
Just check the cover. Check the cover. If the cover has this typography, it's very obviously. If it looks like this, it's the old one. The round.
Okay.
I don't have the new one. I have a copy of the new one somewhere, but I don't know where. I'm not that organized. I have books everywhere because people started wanting signed books, and it's like, that's so kind, but it's like it's work. I'm lazy. Okay, my sense.
So I have one other question.
Please.
So this is just random. I love this particular author. He's also an indie publisher. So I'm just wondering if you've seen his work. This is basically. So this is Craig Allenson. He's written this fantastic space series called Expeditionary Force.
I've heard of it. I've not read it.
It's got that humor that you have. I think it's a bit more humorous than your style.
Okay.
But it's this fantastic, like aliens invade Earth, and then you find out and that's another alien force comes and saves Earth, and then you find out the first guys are actually the good guys, second guys are the bad. So it's beautifully convoluted, and there's this the main two characters is the main guy is called Joe Bishop. He's just a normal army guy, and his partner is this soda can, which is an extremely old alien AI. So soda can, the beer can is called Skippy. So it's called Skippy and Joe.
I've heard of this. Yeah.
18 books, and it's just there are issues. The writing is a little wonky some of the places, but that's fine because he's an indie author and whatnot. I love this series. I absolutely love this series. It might be up your alley. I don't know. He actually finished the series 3 years back or something. It was a total of 15 books, I think. And obviously, again, I had to say goodbye to all my favorite characters. And then 2 years later, he's like, you know what? I have one more story. And then he started back.
I could see myself doing that.
So he's going back, and it's a good premise. Like, he's like, I actually figured out a way to get back into the universe. So,
good.
He's planned out another 5 books. So I'm along with the journey. So I recommend this series highly. Columbus
you.
Day is possibly the weakest book, just like Dresden Files and Stormfront. It just gets better from here.
Okay.
Anyway, I just thought I'd talk about this.
Thank you.
That's it.
My friend Joe Carroll is, I think, a big fan.
Okay.
He has a YouTube channel, which is the only reason I mention him. I believe that's one of the ones he goes on about quite a bit. It does. I don't hear about it as much. I'm in a very certain corner of the indie world, very specific. It's not the biggest selling books specifically. It's like it's a corner. It's like I don't know how to describe it, but I hear about those books a lot and not about other stuff. So
I get it.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, you get siloed a little bit.
I get it. That's it. Thank you so much, Joe. You've been here for
Thank you.
49 minutes.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
A lot of your time. Farooq, do you want to say anything? Or should we just sign off?
No, I just thank you, Joe. And if you're ever in this part of the world, because you are kind of related to this part of the world, so if you do come down this way, give us a call. And thank you so much.
Blame my father-in-law because he came over one of the early waves of immigration right around 1970, right around the war, right? And but they're physicians, so they had a house and they had like means, and they basically brought over the rest of the family in 2s and 4s, right? So now the whole family is in like New Jersey and like Long Island, and like my wife is like, we could go back to Bangladesh, but she's like, I don't have any. She has hardly anybody there anymore, like because they're all here. Like if I want Bangladesh, I go to New Jersey, and so but I would love to hopefully one day we can make that happen. That sounds fantastic. Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm really pleased and honored to be on here. So
because we've been watching your videos and we've been I follow you on Twitter, and I was telling Farooq, this dude is just like us, especially the last video you were throwing out these references, and he wasn't catching them because he wasn't alive. He was too young.
Yeah, he's too young.
I was like, Joe, we know all these references.
Yeah.
That's what I wrote to you.
Yeah. No, I find that people our age sometimes get the book in a different way. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Bye.
No, so thank you very much,
No.
and please, our warmest greetings to your wife. That's one big reason which gave me the courage to reach out to you. So
I'll tell her. Thank you very much. Yes.
And thank you very much, and hopefully you'll join us again sometime soon.
Anytime. Say the word.
Thank you so much.
All right, everybody.
Thank you so much.
সবাই আজকের এই স্পেশাল শোতে থাকার জন্য যারা লাইভ দেখেছেন, থ্যাংক ইউ সো মাচ, এন্ড যারা পরে দেখবেন, থ্যাংক ইউ as well. So we'll be back. You guys wanted Booked On back. Now share this with everybody in Bangladesh. We'll be back next week with another special show. Till then, সবাই ভালো থাকবেন, and good night.
Or good afternoon.